Assalamu alaikum everyone. Thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. I'll get started. Before I get started with my talk, I just wanted to mention that I don't speak professionally. This is one of the few times I've had to speak to a large crowd. So forgive any mistakes, and I'll get started with today's talk. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am the father of two kids, a 5-year-old son and a 6-month-old daughter. This is the picture over here on the display. These two little guys are the highlight of my life. Everything that I do revolves around them, and all of my life goals are basically geared towards bringing them more happiness, and that's what I strive for daily. I'm also the co-founder at a small company called Front Matter, where we're working with some amazing designers and developers to build a new kind of design agency, which is using technology to connect designers in Pakistan, India, and other places with startups based in the US to give them more exposure and be able to work on world-class level projects. Before this, I was at Meta for about a couple of years. I was working on the ads team, where I was helping small businesses develop products for. I was helping develop products for small businesses to build advertising and make advertising easier for them, where they could get the same amount of revenue and the same amount of output from our Facebook ads products as they would get from other products, like, as enterprise teams would get from Facebook ads. And before that, I was at Motive as head of design for about 6 years, building their initial brand identity, the product, and then later on moved to building their design team for the next 5-6 years, and that was like a really awesome growth journey for me. For today's talk, since this month's theme is pain, I thought, base our talk around responding to pain, and one of the best ways to respond to pain is persistence. So I just wanted to talk and share a few stories around persistence and how that pays off in the face of hardships and in the face of pain. I'd like to just share a few anecdotes, and I feel like hopefully that is a very hopefully that is useful to everyone over here as well. So the first thing I want to share is around taking ownership. That is the first lesson that I wanted to share today. I grew up in a Pakistan where you're either an engineer or a doctor or basically a disgrace to your family, and so my dad, essentially, whenever we passed in front of an engineering school, he would point to that, कि बेटा आपने यहाँ पे जाना है और इसकी तैयारी करनी है, and that's where I kind of set my goals as well, कि I'm destined to be a computer engineer, and really just started preparing for that. But here's the catch: like I was never good at maths. I was never good with numbers, and I failed in mathematics in my 5th grade, in my 6th grade, in my 9th grade. I even failed maths in my pre-board exams, and so that was like kind of something that was still pursuing engineering was something that I was just still doing. And even though I made it into NUST as an engineer, I again failed in my first semester in maths again, and that resulted in me doing my first summer where I had to convert my F grade to D. The problem was that again I failed the F to D exam as well, and I still remember my professor saying like, "Jao beta, agle saal aana," and he threw the paper in front of me, and that was kind of like the low point in my college career, where I decided like this was basically kind of the lowest I could go, and I decided to start taking ownership from there. So there were two things that I kind of did right from that point onwards. The first one was I took ownership of the problem itself. I recognized that, hey, nobody except for me is going to actually go and fix this problem. So what I did was, even though I lived only like 20 minutes away from college, I went to the hostel over there, and even though all rooms were taken because it was middle of the year, I got this little storage closet booked for myself where I could only place a bed inside and didn't have a roommate or anything, but I just had this isolation, and that place allowed me to bring a lot more focus and just really commit myself to improving my grades, and honestly, like I rose my grades from like 1.5 GPA to like something above 3, where I could respectfully graduate, and that was kind of the first turning point in my career over there. The second thing was that I realized that I wasn't going to be a good engineer at all, even if I graduated, and so having a career as an engineer was kind of dishonest for me, and that's where I thought like I should find something else for myself. During one of my summers, actually, I was attending a design class and a web design class as well, and that's where I found the perfect mixture of like my interest in art, and I used to sketch in childhood as well, and I was really good with drawing and colors, etc. And then when I saw how I could combine that with technology and actually make a living out of it, I got really excited. This is something that I could design all day, animate all day, make landing pages all day, but I wouldn't get tired, and I really just pushed myself in building my skill as a graphic designer. The only problem was that I couldn't turn it immediately into a career, which is why that's where luck comes in. So I had the benefit that a couple of my friends were really good engineers, but also really entrepreneurial minded, and we thought, hey, instead of doing an FYP where we would just present our projects to our professors, we actually wanted to build a company from there. So that's where I became a part of the team and said like, hey, that's my contribution. I brought design and kind of more of the visuals into the project that we were building. It was initially like a scalable server architecture called Peer Cloud that we were building, which would automatically scale with web traffic, and that's where I designed my first interface, my first logo. It was pretty ugly at that point, but you got to start somewhere, and that's how basically I turned my career into design. So this, I'm looking like sharing some photographs over here. These are my couple of friends with our standee and showing the Pre-Cloud logo. And these are my couple of friends that we have been there for the past 15 years. The next lesson I wanted to share is about being stubborn. And this is when we had graduated from college, and the three of us, we wanted to build a company, and we were kind of entrepreneurs, but we didn't know how to build a company or a business in the first place. There's a lot that goes into building a successful business, so we didn't have a business plan. We didn't know how to reach our audience. We didn't know even how to market our product in the right way, and those were all gaps that we understood, but we kept at it. And what we did was we got this little one bedroom apartment in Town where the three of us would just go every day. All we did was we just showed up and we did our work. We took projects from different customers. We also thought about our own products that we could build. During that time, actually, I found a way to support myself as well. I was working as a cartoonist at this pharmaceutical company where I was designing pamphlets for their campaigns, where they would teach kind of people on how to use their medication or give an injection to someone. That's where I got like 8,000 rupees a month or so, and I used that to give my part in the rent, and we supported ourselves through that time. Even though we spent a year in that little apartment, we really couldn't arrive at something that we thought could scale and become really big. We were a bit ambitious because you could always do services projects, you could always do other things, but we just had our eyes set on something big, and we wanted to make a real product. That's when we found out that there was Pakistan's first tech incubator was starting in Lahore, which was called Plan 9, and we applied towards it. We didn't know at the time that this could be the turning point for us, but we just applied and we got in. We didn't think too much of it, and we thought hey, let's go to Lahore and live there for 6 months and see what happens. But during those 6 months, even after the long lectures from other business people and successful entrepreneurs and even just personal trainers, etc., we did get a lot of insights, but we were still at a place where we found ourselves trapped in this little product that we couldn't really scale out of. Luckily at that time, just at the end of our 6 months during Plan 9, there was this founder in the Silicon Valley that showed up as a lecturer over there, and his name was Shoaib Makani. He had this idea in his mind for a company that wanted to assist truck drivers in the US. He brought that idea to the three of us in Plan 9 and said hey, I know you guys have your own company, but I want to build this company out there, and if you would be, if you could join me, I would love to have you as founding employees. We took that bet because we thought that being at the back seat of an actual funded startup would be a lot more beneficial for us in terms of learning and actually seeing a business grow from 0 to 1. And that's exactly what happened when we, that's how we got into Motive. Initially, it was just 3 people when Shoaib over there was in the US, and the 3 of us were in Pakistan. We built the Pakistan office, the initial branding for the company, and slowly we grew on from there. Now Keep Truckin' is more than 5,000 people. It's rebranded to Motive now, but yeah, it's still $1.4 billion in valuation and still growing. So really proud of that journey. You can see the picture over here, which is us 3 standing with Shoaib, who's the founder of Motive. And this is one of the most iconic pictures because this was that first day where he came to Pakistan, and actually like we discussed, building the company together. And so it's super memorable for me. The next lesson I wanted to share was around taking leaps. So taking a few leaps of faith. Being at Motive for about 5 to 6 years, I had the chance to build a world-class design team. Initially, I worked on Motive/Keep Truckin's branding. I built their product and their design teams. Initially, when I was the first hands-on designer, I built all those things myself. But then, as we grew 3 years into the job itself, I was promoted to head of design, and I started actually building my design team based out of the US. And so I had the chance to work with some amazing designers, illustrators, animators, even industrial designers, and we had all these types of talents in-house in our design team. And what we built was basically the centralized design team that would serve all the other departments in the company. So we were serving product, we were serving sales, marketing, and we were basically working as a centralized agency. However, due to different reasons, at the end of those kind of 5-6 years, there came a point where the company thought that it would be good to bring on external leaders from outside and scale us a little more faster. And one of those leaders that initially was brought on decided like, hey, we don't need a centralized design org, and they wanted to split the marketing design team under marketing. That's how like I had some differences within the company, and I decided like, I could just mope all day and kind of move on, or I could make a decision and take a leap. And so during all that time when I was a little bit depressed about losing all of my hard work for the past 5-6 years, one night I gathered all of my work and built my portfolio website, and I spent all night putting it up and just see what happens. Funny thing is, a couple of days later I got a call from Facebook, from their recruiter, and they just wanted me on as a design leader for Facebook to lead one of their ads design teams. I was at that point at a crossroads because Motive had applied for my green card at that time. I was halfway through my green card process and almost like really about to get my green card when I had the choice to make this jump, but I'd had to give up all of the progress that was made on the green card process. But I said like, hey, look, opportunities like these don't come again. So I took the leap. I went to Facebook and I actually gave up my green card process at that time. It did seem like a big risk, but luckily I had a manager over there who was really kind of empathetic to the immigration troubles and everything, and because she was an immigrant herself, and she actually applied for my green card immediately as I joined. So 2 years later into Facebook, I got my green card as well. So it all worked out perfectly fine, and taking that leap was kind of the best thing I could do for my career. This is the picture I wanted to show over here was my first day at Facebook. So you can see the first day banner in the background, and this was a super exciting time for me where I was just starting this new journey in my life and getting into Facebook. The last lesson I wanted to share is around having some faith. After a couple of years at Facebook, after I had my green card, my best friend Shaneeb, again from all these previous projects, he approached me again and said like, hey, what are you going to do with all the stock that you have lying around from Motive and Facebook? So why don't we just try our startup again? And even though at that time it did feel a bit risky because I had kids and a family, and I said like, hey, I could just stay here at Facebook in a stable company for the long run and just be a director or something in 5-6 years and then kind of go from there to another stable job, or I could jump again and take the fast train or the risky train and jump on a startup train again. I think we took that leap of faith again, and Shaneeb and I, we kind of sold some stock and decided we're gonna spend about a year or so testing out different projects and seeing what sticks on the wall to see what makes a successful startup. And we decided initially that it was just going to be 1 year living on our savings, but at the end of it was about 2 years, and we still didn't really have a solid idea, because we had tried a few things, we threw some things on the wall, but they didn't really stick, and we were still in the search of a really strong idea. But seeing our savings burn down every day was kind of like painful to see at the same time. Luckily, again, staying persistent, Shaneeb always used to say daily, like, hey, the only measure of success is how long we can stay stuck to this, and so as long as we have something to keep roof of our heads, we should just keep trying. And that kind of worked out, because we, after a long time in research and trying to figure out what the best founder and product fit was, we landed on Front Matter. And Front Matter is where we actually found that our skills as founders and our strengths really aligned with the product that we wanted to build. And now we have an amazing team of about more than 20 designers that are world-class designers, and we're serving a few clients in the US that are successful businesses, and we're making a ton of revenue. And so it's been a super exciting journey so far, and taking that leap of faith and staying in the dark for about a couple of years, it all came to an interesting end, where now we have a running business, and then we have a journey to follow in the next few years, where we see this business grow in the future. I'd like to open this panel up for discussion, so feel free to ask me anything, guys.
While business development and in fact, like getting to network, it's important. It's important to scale your company and actually build a repeatable sales cycle. However, there's a rule. Your founders must learn how to sell the product. सबसे पहले, like अगर मुझे नहीं बेचना आता अपना product, if I can't go to someone and actually sell Front Matter to them, then I can't tell a business development person or a salesperson to go sell that product for me. So we're still in the process of building a really strong pitch where people can come on board, and we give that to a salesperson or a business development person and try to make it.
So that means you negate that each and every entrepreneur who is primarily technical person can be a good CEO?
They can be good CEOs.
Yes or no?
So there are many technical CEOs. In fact, Elon Musk, for example, super technical CEO leading a world-class organization. But I think it takes a lot more than just technical skill to lead an organization, and that's where the learning comes in. I think a lot of founders learn things the hard way by doing things, day in, day out, and that is why 90% of startups fail, right? Like only 10% of startups succeed, just because a lot of founders are learning things on the go. 10% of them are trying to, are lucky enough to get that luck and get that understanding in time and build that product market.
So would you recommend the new entrepreneurs, the youngsters, they need to build a team from the beginning, because all of your story tells that the failures are because of the team building. You can always, earn by your own creativity as an artist or as a designer, as a worker, as a technical labor, but building a team makes the company.
Yes, so this is one thing that I learned a while back. If you're one person, right, and even if you're the best designer in the world or the best developer in the world, you only have 24 hours a day. And आप 24 घंटे में कितना काम कर रहे हैं, आप कितने projects कर रहे हैं, right? And so the only way to really do something, conquer something, right? Like Alexander didn't conquer the world alone. He खुद ही तलवार उठा के गया था. He built an army around him. We remember him for being that strong leader that he was. But the way to do things is through people. Like we're social animals. We work through networking. इसलिए हम सारे आज यहाँ पे बैठे हैं क्योंकि हम अकेले कुछ नहीं कर सकते. And so that is, team building definitely is a foundational part of it. However, the conviction, the drive, and the goal comes from, of course, it needs to come from a really strong place, a really singular place. And I think that's the role that leaders play in any organization.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to scale it.
Yeah.
What, in your opinion, is the best way to retain employees?
When I was at Keep Trucking for like about 6 years, I think it was an amazing company. The growth experience was awesome. But we were 3 years in this Pakistan office, and हमें कभी भी लगता था कि like we were in a silo, and we were just working day in day out to no, I'm not sure what end, right? Like we weren't really clear about what value we were delivering at that company itself. So I think one of the biggest things is, number one, is making, when you hire carefully, don't overhire, because you're not going to be able to value your people if you're just building a crowd. But if you're hiring the right people, if you're slowly building your organization with the roles that you actually need, then showing value to your people. The other thing is be human. I've seen a lot of leaders transform into this corporate, unalive kind of zombie where they have a lot of corporate speak and they give a lot of motivational talks, but in the day-to-day workings, you can't really connect with them, and you can't talk to them. You can't talk to them on a personal basis. You can't share your personal experiences with them. And so, don't be a leader like that. Work with your people as humans. Recognize that they have their families, emotions. So at Front Matter as well, we made a point of this. Like Shaneem and I both have kids. We make a point to mention our families and our kids first and foremost whenever we meet everyone, and we encourage family orientation in our company as well. We encourage people to take time off and be with their families. Part-time reading is called Articulating Design Decisions, and it's a pretty interesting book about just talking about your design. But regardless, let's try to understand what design does at any company, right? Why are you there? Is it to express your own creativity, or meet your own personal goals, or is it to further a common goal that the company is working towards? And so one of the biggest mistakes that I think designers, especially like younger designers who are just getting into the industry, they work on their interaction design skills and they work on their visual design skills, but the part that they miss is product thinking. And a lot of our folks are just weak at going to leaders and explaining in terms of business sense, like, hey, itna paisa aa raha hai, I think अगर हम इस बटन को इधर कर देंगे ना तो इतना पैसा आएगा. And just from a baseline perspective, and nobody will ever ignore you for that. But if you just come and say like हमें research करनी है for the sake of research, or हमें ये design इस तरह बनाना है for the sake of like, oh, it's looking cool, you're gonna have a really hard time convincing anyone who's serious about this job. Like even any product manager that are trying to push things out the door really fast, they want the best for the business. And so learning to speak the business language, learning to talk in terms of metrics, saying, you know, like our sign-ups for this page are lower, and talking about exactly what and why is stopping those sign-ups, being able to articulate that यहाँ पे इस experience की वजह से इधर sign-up कम हो रहे हैं, and then when you go and actually present an opportunity, any business person would be crazy to ignore that. Like पैसा अगर table पे पड़ा हुआ है, who will take it? When I was at Facebook, basically, the way Facebook differed from a lot of the other companies that I've worked at is product designers were the product managers over there. And so designers would go out and do research and figure out what's wrong with the product and what is missing. And then we would set goals. Okay, how are we going to solve those user problems? But the goals weren't set in like, oh, we're going to solve this user problem, and then after that, we're going to solve 10 other user problems. And we always made sure that whatever we did, even if it was like a little change to the gradient on a button, it would translate to millions of dollars in revenue, just because we were focused on solving that problem itself. And so I think it's a delicate balance. As designers, we have to compromise on, in fact, like force ourselves to think short term. A lot of us designers want to create the most perfect, the most usable UI from the get-go, and even product designers that I'm working with today, I've had a hard time to cut down features. Like isko kam kar lete hain, ye kam kar lete hain. But if you are a designer with strong product thinking, and then again it comes back to product thinking, that if you are able to think in terms of metrics, and if you're able to think in terms of business success, you're able to break your design down easily into achievable chunks. Like, ऐसा कभी नहीं होता कि you're forced to stop features until like 6 features later you're able to get actual revenue. There's always some opportunity that you can work towards, and design can always collaborate there. The design can always give their input. It's just that we have to put our ego aside for a minute and say like, okay, थोड़ी देर के लिए जब perfect design नहीं बनाते, थोड़ी देर के लिए actually let's do some product work and figure out what the real business value is. If you gather competitive people in any environment, the problem with Facebook is like, not the problem, but like the fortunate thing about Facebook is it's hard to get into it, right? And so whoever is in there is usually really good at what they're doing. And when you're working with competitive people, the best thing that you get out of it is ownership. Like we used to hire a designer and they would come onto our team, but then we wouldn't need to tell them anything after that. They would go and understand what the scope of things is. They would actually set their own goals, and they would come to the managers and say like, hey, I think that this should be my next goal and I should try to strive towards this, and let me know if I'm off with my idea. Over here and in other places where I've worked, there's a lot of top-down culture where you expect leadership to set those goals for you and define your path. And roadmaps are aapke samne hone chahiye. And I've seen a lot of designers kind of fumble when they're left in an open ground. So that's the one major difference I saw, where when you gather like a ton of competitive people, things just happen themselves. Like that's why these companies are successful, is because they have a lot of brilliant minds working with them and they don't have to tell them anything. They're just working with their own. We take accountability. So Nida can kind of like attest to this. Whenever we're solving a problem, Shaneem and I and as co-founders and other leaders in the company, we're not telling people what to do. We're just talking about the problem. Like, हमारे पास projects are in time to deliver. Yeah, we have a design problem, and how are we supposed to kind of solve it in a very sophisticated manner for a very strong corporate design. Like if you're designing an animation for Motive, you can give that to a medium level or junior designer, but shuru mein we give them that open space. Just go and experiment and try to make your own mistakes, and then we work on feedback. A lot of the times we've seen senior leaders take control themselves, say, "This is better than I can do, ताकि जल्दी जल्दी हो जाए and just move forward." It's a lot more frustrating to work with mistakes and allow mistakes to happen, but in the long run it actually works for the better, because you're then helping people get better within your org, and they're going to stay there for you, and in 2 years later they might be your most precious assets. Yes, just repeating the question, what is the toughest lesson I've had to learn? And this is top of mind for me. It's self-pity is the biggest crime. You can land into a lot of problems for your life, but remember, like, there's like more than 3-4 billion people in the world, and everybody's facing their own problems. And so if you start like dwelling on कि मेरे साथ ये हो गया, मेरा F आ गया, और मैं अब क्या करूँगा, या engineering college में फंस गया हूँ, मैं आगे यहाँ से कैसे निकलूँगा, take the self-pity aside for a second and be hard on yourself time to time. Sometimes it works. Give yourself a slack, like give yourself room to make mistakes, but at the same time, hold yourself accountable when you notice yourself giving yourself like this excuse that the world has dealt with the wrong cards. Like self-pity is the biggest crime.